Welcome to worship at First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ, here in Webster Groves. I am Cliff Aerie, the director of MICA, the Ministry of Imagination, Creativity, and the Arts. The worship that you're going to experience today is a little different than our norm, and perhaps it will be like nothing you've ever experienced before. But we ask that you stay with us and be open to what unfolds today. We have been the recipient of a Calvin Institute worship grant, and we are able to use that grant to explore our role as stewards of God's creation. It's a year-long process. It's titled Journey Through Creation, Earth, Art, and Faith Alive. There will be webinars, worship, and some excellent leadership. Our first chapter is Earth's Story as Our Story. And at our recent webinar, we were very fortunate to have Ecological Advocate Jean Ponzi and Storyteller Valerie Tutson with us. This worship includes segments from that webinar, the music of the Oikos Jazz Ensemble, and the Logos Readers. Come, let us worship the God of all creation.
God shouts out your name, inviting you to discover your story in the midst of Earth's story.
Me?
God whispers your name, inviting you to dream, to wonder, and be filled with awe.
Me?
Yes, you, each of you, all of you. Anything is possible.
All of us? Young, old, sister, brother, cousin, friend, parent, child?
Yes, breathe in the Spirit and expect the impossible.
All of us, the proud and the strong, the lost and the searching, the joyous and the sad?
Yes, breathe in the Spirit and expect the impossible.
All of us, word arrangers and finger painters?
All of us, rope jumpers and slow walkers?
Belly laughers and soul singers?
Mountain climbers and backyard gardeners?
Yes, you, all of you. Breathe in the Spirit and expect the impossible. Here and now, God breaks into our experience and calls us into the midst of creation, into the very heart of life.
Yes.
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 not worthy of all these blessings. Give me a clean heart. Give me a clean heart. Give me a clean heart, and I'll follow you.
As we gather in worship, we pause for a time of prayer. And I invite you to experience prayer in a way that perhaps you normally do not. Our storyteller Valerie Tutson will share with us an ancient rite of invocation.
This is a prayer that I have learned from my teachers of the Andean spiritual tradition, the Q'ero people in Peru. And so we, in this tradition, begin by turning to the south. And if you can't physically turn yourself, you can turn your intention to the south. But if you can, go ahead and move your body. Go for it. And take a deep breath. We give thanks to the winds of the south, the place of Sachamama, the great serpent, the place of the south where we are invited to come and release all of our burdens, to get rid of everything that no longer serves us, the way the serpent sheds its skin. We give thanks to the winds of the south. And you can turn to your right. We give thanks to the winds of the west, the place of the setting sun, the place of the puma and the jaguar, the one who knows how to walk between this world and the next, the one who teaches us to walk in the dark, sure-footed and with integrity and fearlessness. We give thanks to the winds of the west. Turn to your right or the north. We give thanks to the winds of the north, the place of the mountains, the apus, the place of all wisdom, the place of all the souls that have ever been and all of those that are yet to come. The place also of Hummingbird, that little tiny bird who can do the most amazing things, who reminds us that there is nothing that is impossible, and that we must always drink the joy from every flower we encounter. Life is sweet. We give thanks to the winds of the north. Turn to the right. We give thanks to the winds of the east, the place of the rising sun, the place of dawn and rebirth and new beginnings, the place of the eagle and the condor, the place where we are taught to spread our wings wide and fly with the Holy and the Spirit into our becoming. We give thanks to the winds of the east. And for those of you who are in a place where you can physically get down onto the ground, I invite you to. I won't do it right now because I'll drop out of the screen, but put your head on the ground if you like, or bring your intention to the earth or your belly there. We give thanks to you, Mother Earth, Pachamama. Thank you for letting us walk on your back. Thank you for giving us everything that we need for all of our food and our shelter and our clothing. Thank you also for taking what is garbage and mulching it deep within your belly, turning it over so that soil is fertile again and seeds can be planted and life will come anew. Thank you. Now lift your hands above your heads. Imagine that you're looking through the ceiling, or maybe you are outside and you can see the stars starting to come into the sky. We give thanks to you, star brothers and sisters in the moon. We give thanks to you. Oh, Holy One, you are known by many names, but you are in fact the nameless one, the one who is the maker of all the galaxies, all the universes, this earth, all the directions and all that lives here on it, in it. We give thanks for allowing us to dance this dance of life one more time. We bring our arms to ourselves. We wrap around, give ourselves a hug. Take a breath. We give thanks to ourselves, each one, surrounded by this creation, a part of it. We give thanks for all we have ever been, all we are in this moment, and all we are becoming. Take a deep breath. And one more deep breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes and bring yourself back to our sacred gathering.
I invite all God's children to take a deep breath. The world is a magnificent place, filled with wonder and beauty. I asked my friends Valerie and Jean if they would share a story from their childhood when they first experienced the beauty and wonder and majesty of God's creation.
From my earliest rememberings, my sense of the holy and the sacred and God and nature are all wrapped up into one. One of my favorite songs as a child, we might use new words today in the UCC, but one of my favorite hymns was, "This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres." I remember long, lazy summer afternoons as a little kid in the Asman's backyard when we would lie down on the ground surrounded by the green grass and with the leftover dandelions, staring up into the big blue sky, watching the clouds move around. And I literally remember feeling as if I was held by the earth and all of the sky at once, completely a part of all that was. And I knew that that had to be God.
My relationship with nature that has become my profession and my vocation really dropped in my lap in so many different ways over and over and over again. And I like to say I was smart enough at various times to pay attention and to engage with that. I was very different from Valerie growing up. I grew up in the what became the suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At the time I was living there were still farm fields and woods all around our suburban house. And I did not like to get dirty. So I would wander around talking to myself and talking to my imaginary friends around those woods and fields with the trees and with the rocks. And, you know, ecology is all about relationships. It's the science of understanding relationships in place. And I would play with my Barbie dolls and my troll dolls and talk to the trees and talk to my imaginary fish friends. And all of that just somehow fused together in my spirit to guide me to be aware of and to respond to the invitations that came along later. And I'm so grateful for that.
Let us pray. Thank you, God, for creating this wonderful world and us. Help us to be your children and to reach out to others and all that you have made in this wonderful world. Be with us, guide us as we seek to live your way. In Jesus' name, amen.
The creation story in Genesis is familiar to just about everyone.
Handed down orally for generations, it's a wonderfully poetic narrative giving detail to each phase of creation.
For centuries, people have read the text about Adam and Eve and their descendants being granted dominion over creation, that our task is to subdue the earth.
We've taken these two words, dominion and subdue, out of context.
As permission to plunder the earth for our own benefit and profit.
Let's pause and reimagine the Genesis creation narrative.
As our responsibility to be stewards of God's world.
As our call to be caretakers of God's original blessing.
Listen closely as we retell the ancient yet timeless story.
A story reimagined for our time and our world today.
In the beginning.
In the beginning.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth.
The earth was a formless void.
And darkness covered the face of the deep.
And a mighty wind arose from God.
The Spirit of God swept over the face of the waters.
And God said, "Let there be light."
And there was light.
And God separated the light from the darkness.
God called the light day, and the darkness she called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
Then, over the next 4 days, God rolled up her sleeves
and got down to business, fashioning and forming creation.
Earth and sky,
land and sea.
God's voice brought forth plants and trees bearing seeds of life.
The bounty of creation sprang forth.
Fruit-bearing seeds for generations to come.
Then the Holy One separated day from night.
And formed the sun to give brightness and warmth to the day.
The moon to wax and wane in the night.
And with a wave, stars were flung across the cosmos.
After 5 days, God looked around and said,
"This is good. This is very good."
But there was more to be done.
And God lifted her voice.
Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind.
Cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind.
And it was so. Then God smiled and said,
Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness.
Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air.
Over the cattle and over all the wild animals of the earth.
And over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth.
So God created humankind in God's image. In the image of God they were created, male and female.
God blessed and said to them,
Be fruitful and multiply.
Fill the earth and subdue it.
Have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air.
And over every living thing that moves upon the earth.
And again God smiled upon her creation and said to her children, Take care of my world.
I have given you every plant-yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth.
Fruitful seeds that shall provide you with food.
To you I entrust the beasts of the earth and the birds of the air.
Everything that has the breath of life I have given to you for your care.
This is my world entrusted to you.
Take care of it.
You are the stewards of my creation.
And it was so. God saw everything that she had made, and indeed it was very good.
And there was evening, and there was morning.
The 6th day.
And on the 7th day, God rested from all her labors.
And God blessed the 7th day and called it holy.
But what of the first 6 days? Were they not also blessed by God?
Surely every element of the ecosystem we have received is a holy blessing.
Surely all of our world echoes with the resonance of God's blessing.
Indeed, a holy voice still proclaims,
This is good.
This is very good.
Take care of it.
In the creation story in Genesis, God forms the world and all of creation out of nothing. And God then forms and fashions a world with the right substance, the right resources, the right topography, the right creatures to inhabit it. And then what does God do? God smiles and says, "This is good. This is so very good." And then God blesses it. During our webinar, I asked our Ecological Advocate Jean Ponzi about us human beings and our role in the web of life. And then I went a step further. I asked a second question. I said, "Jean, if we are supposed to be the caretakers of God's creation, how have we done over all these years? And how are we doing right now?"
Yeah, Cliff, you ask, how are we doing? And I would say, we've made it. We're the crown of creation. We're the top of the heap. We're the headliners in the universe. We're the star of our own story. And we've also separated ourselves from all our relations in so many ways. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we're acting out so much. Remember that Kurt Vonnegut novel where everybody where they were all the daffodils, they all had different families and they all had different carasses because they were all so lonely? Maybe we need that again. We are one, and a very young one, of millions of species. And our actions, however, one species, our actions, our inventions are disrupting pretty much all living systems on the earth. We're causing extinctions, we're whacking out the Earth's climate systems, we're depleting fisheries, the list goes on and on. You can hear them, you can read this litany of our accomplishments over and over and over again. How do we deal with that? How do we lift ourselves up from that and change and come correct? Well, our actions are, yes, we are making a mess of things. We have made a mess of things. We have even transformed carbon, the stuff of life that is up there in that thin blue line, the atmosphere around the planet Earth. We have transformed that into an accumulated toxin. Not the brightest bulbs in the array, really. So what does a mother do when there's a very young species that is acting out? Time out. Time out. The big time out is what I think we are in now for our species, for our time on this planet. And it took little bits of non-living protein coated with fat to be able to equalize across our entire species, across all of our geopolitical boundaries, and get us to take a time out as much as we are doing that. Very, very important. An opportunity like no other. And nature does not select for individuals, but nature does equalize imbalance. And one of the great things about the big timeout, thanks to COVID-19, is that we have a friend in that timeout, and that is nature. And we can go out of doors, out of our own self-made world for solace and for exercise and for uplift. And oh my God, what a gift that is. To be able to reconnect with nature. And we're probably going to go through all 4 seasons that are typical on the planet Earth before that timeout really changes significantly. So even when the shape of days is the same, every single dawn, every single sunset, which is how it feels to so many of us now when we're so used to having all these distractions that we make, and it's so wonderful and it's la, 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 la. We still can get perspective from nature. We can get perspective when we look around the world around us. And that's one of the things that we need to work on is our perspective. Because we have tended to think we have been very conditioned in very linear ways. I always have to watch my hands in the camera when I'm doing this, right? Straight lines, linear ways, like we're going to come to the edge and fall off, right? How long was that a belief for our species? So this kind of dualistic thinking, a two-point decision-making matrix, the readers talked about the day and the night, the dark and the light. Not that one of those was good and one of those was bad, but we tend to get so jammed up along these kind of linear perspectives. And when you're always on one end or the other, you're always a little bit afraid that you're on the wrong side. And we are a species where when we are afraid, we can be manipulated very easily. Is this happening? Yes, I would postulate that it is. So what do? Perspective. Let's take it up a notch. Let's take it up into other cultures besides just our linear geopolitical Western culture and look at the way in which the duality, the yin and the yang, those partners, those eternal mates, dancing partners are always changing and transforming into each other and dancing with each other like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, only she's doing it backwards in high heels. And then let's take it up another notch. Let's take it up where we can start to see that duality as the spiral, the double helix that is giving rise to all life, and we are understanding a lot of that now. We need to work with the kinds of perspectives that we have, but not just with our perspective, also with nature's. In the natural world, things that we can learn from the natural world, everything is interdependent. All things are connected in the cycles of the earth. So when a log rots, up comes the fungi, which are actually the fruiting bodies of the mycorrhizal network, and they are decomposing that formerly living thing and returning all those nutrients and all that energy back to the earth so new plants can grow. What a symbiosis, what an exchange, what a body of gratitude and joyful reciprocity we can learn from the natural world. Also, in nature, everybody's somebody's lunch at some point. We get to trade around on that. And one day, when I'm ready for that, I hope my friends will dig a hole in the ground, drop me in there gently, and very gently toss in worms. And then the big exchange, this one between our animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. The fact that the waste product of our breath of life, the carbon dioxide that we exhale, is taken by all the green plants of Earth and transformed using sunlight into the oxygen that we need to breathe. So there is this constant exchange of reciprocity between two kingdoms, as we call them on Earth. No waste, no greed, abundance, generosity, relationship. Could we live this way and think this way? Yes, I think we can, but we gotta work on it. And boy, in this big time out, there's a lot of things we have to think about so that we could get to the point where, can we tell the difference between a rock and a tree? Can I really tell the differences, or am I more attracted to the similarities between me and someone who maybe doesn't look like me, or doesn't speak like me, or doesn't eat foods like me, or doesn't even have the same belief system that I have? This is a challenge for our species. So here we are in the big time out. Mother Nature, as any good mother does, has given us some simple rules to follow. Follow these simple rules. Double the distance that you normally keep between one another. Usually it's about 3 feet, right? That's kind of the common conversational polite distance. Double that. Give each other some space. That's not easy on a planet with 7.5 and growing billion people, but we can do it. And then wash your hands, the hands that make the inventions. Bring them together. Let them clean each other. Let them feel that touch of other within yourself. And last but not least, cover your face. Do one little thing to put yourself a little bit behind the curtain so that your breath of life does not carry the breath of death to someone else. And you don't get that from someone else. Reciprocity, grace, exchange. Ecology is all about relationships and place. And the beauty of this is that we don't have to do it everywhere. In fact, we can't fly around everywhere right now. I think that's a good thing. So where you are, who you are, what you have the capacity to do, that's where to reflect, to take advantage of this big time out, to learn about yourself and learn about nature and grow a lot in heart and some in mind, and take good care of the bodies that we have been given in this life on the planet Earth. Periodically, I have to take myself in hand and say, yes, I will. Yes, I will stay here. Yes, I will keep doing this work. Because a lot of times, I frankly just want to stop. But as long as I can be of service, and hopefully this is inspiring to you too, let us say, yes, I am part of the circle of life.
After Jean's heartfelt words, I asked Valerie about the power of stories, especially the Earth's story.
I think you said so much of it, right? That stories touch us. There are different kinds of stories, right? We have the stories that we tell of our own experience, or even in the ancient times, right? If you were sitting around the campfire, all who were there might be telling the old folk tales where animals had characteristics of the people sitting right there around your fire with you. Or in the old days, if someone had gone out for the hunt, they returned to tell of their adventures, or any traveler who came through would tell of their adventures. So you have these folk tales that speak to our own experience, but in a symbolic form and an allegory, which is useful. You know, I think in our time, we're very self-absorbed. And a story helps us see ourselves, but with a little bit of distance, right? Which I think is very useful. I was also thinking about myth and mythology. In our Western culture, when we hear the word myth, we often we think of that as being something that's not true. Oh, that's a myth, that's so-and-so, blah, 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 right? And we dismiss it as something false, as if stories are either true or false. But the wonderful thing about story versus a narrative, which could be true and false, and I think of as more linear, and I think of stories as fact. And the wonderful thing that I think of in terms of myth is that myth is designed to help us wonder and to answer those questions we wonder about. How did we get here? Whose are we? Who made this creation around us? How did the stars get in the sky? What happens to the moon when it goes dark as the cycle goes? What makes the tides come in and out? And because people used to be able to sit in nature and stare at the glory of all of this, and because there was a time when we didn't separate our dancing with the gods, right? Mythology allows a story that gives the interaction of people on earth with the divine. In our days, we don't entertain that so much, and maybe that is what we need to do. We need to we hunger for it, right? Because we know that we're just a small little piece in all of that is made and all that has ever been. So if we re-engage with myth, if we re-engage with story, it helps us see ourselves not only in this moment in time, but how we fit in the grand scheme of all human story. And learning from Jean, right? Like our story, even on the earth, is just, that much of Earth's story. So the more stories we know, the more we can locate ourselves in all of it, if that makes any sense at all.
Yes, Valerie, it does make sense. Earth's story is our story. But sometimes I just don't think we get it. We don't listen carefully enough. Maybe we need to learn Earth's ecological language. Because after all, isn't that the language that God speaks to us? But how do we do that? I think we must stop, listen, see, open our hearts, and breathe. We need to stop. We need to put the rest of the world on hold. And then we need to listen with deep ears and see with eyes afresh, opening our heart and breathing in the soulfulness of God's creation. And in this prayer, we will do it through jazz. May these next few minutes be a holy time of prayer for you.
Please join with us in prayer.
It's the prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray.
This version was adapted for a worship service.
For an ecumenical roundtable on faith, science, and technology.
May these contemporary words bring an old prayer to new life.
Let us open our hearts and our minds to an ever-expanding understanding of God's cosmos.
Our Creator in heaven and earth,
Holy is your name.
may your way be ours.
Your mystery revealed.
Your truth echoes throughout all the cosmos.
Provide us bread for our journey this day.
Forgive our missteps,
miscalculations, and mess-ups,
so that we might know how to forgive others who have mistreated us.
Be with us.
Be with us.
Be with us in the struggle of our egos.
And free us from the bondage,
The chains of power.
The evils that tempt us to stray from your path.
let our prayer of praise ring true.
The universe in glorious majesty belongs to you, infinitely. Amen.
Our final hymn is a new hymn that you will have not heard or sung before. That's because it's an Oikos original. It's called As One. And I invite you to sing along with the vocalist and pay particularly close attention to verse number 2. The world God gave us should not be defaced and scarred by garbage and greed. Let's clean up this mess, ease the distress, embracing our planet as one.
The world can no longer be a place where fear and hatred abound. If love is our guide, peace shall reside, and unity bind us as one. The world can no longer be a place where fear and hatred abound. If love is our guide, peace shall reside, and unity bind us as one. The world no longer should be defaced and scarred by garbage and greed. Let's clean up this mess, ease the distress, embracing our planet as one. The world God gave us should be a place where no one wanders alone. Let's open the door, strangers no more, together and living as one.
As we conclude our worship service, I would like to share with you the words of a wise sage, Rachel Carson. And she wrote, "In every outthrust headland, in every curve of beach, in every grain of sand, there is the earth." Earth Story is our story. Live your story, and may this profound story of God's creation, our planet Earth, resonate deeply in your heart.
So I would like to close this equinox celebration of Earth Story as our story with a heart chant. This comes to me from my teacher, the Venerable Dahani Wahu. She is the founder of Sunray Meditation Society located in Vermont. She's a lineage holder of her indigenous people, the Tselegi, the Cherokee people, the Anigadoa, or the Sweet Potato Clan. And she also is a revered teacher in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. From our hearts to one another, our hearts and the heart of the earth are one. Let's do this as a call and response. There's 2 parts. I'll do it and join me, and then I'll do it and join me. The syllable that opens the heart. Aktashnaena Akteshnaena. Anikokone, anikone, Teshna, ha ha. Akteshnaena, one who thinks the breath. Thank you. Akteshnaena, Akteshnaena. Anikokone, anikone, Teshna, ha ha. Our hearts and the heart of the earth are one. All my relations. Aho. Thank you.